Hey everyone, today I got a lot of requests for, let me grab it, a tutorial on these little flowers. Aren't they cute? I think these would be a really cute little card too. So I'm going to do a quick tutorial for you guys. I'm going to be using, I like to refer to it and how I like to teach my beginners is damp and damp, not wet and wet, because wet and wet is a little bit harder. So just a little bit less water, and that's how we're going to do these. Really, really simple. I had these little daisies or black-eyed Susans in my garden. They are kind of dead right now, but that's what inspired those. The palette I'll be using is that wonderful, I'm having so much fun with this palette, the Floral palette by Paul Rubens. I've done quite a few tutorials on it now. I mean, these are the perfect colors. If you're a floral painter, these are beautiful. And of course, the Paul Rubens palettes I always love. They're rich and creamy and vibrant and just so wonderful. If you have My Lang, those are perfect too. They're actually a sister company of Paul Rubens, so they're a little bit less money, but they have a lot of the similar colors. Look at that. So if you have the My Lang, those are great as well. Use what you have. And I find the quality is really quite good. The light fastness is going to be a little bit higher on the Paul Rubens. Okay. And then I'm playing with my Artisto pads because I've been putting together kind of my summer pictures. So that's what those are. They're all in this little journal, which is why I love these Artisto pads. This actually says spring 2024, but I did end up putting some summer things in here because I had sheets left. So I just love this paper. I think it's fantastic for a beginner. And what's really great is I catalog all these and I can refer back to them, and they take water really well and they have a great texture. So great beginner. If you want something that's 100% cotton, I use the Meeden all the time. It's 100% cotton, and it's just a little bit more than the Artisto as well. If you're out of the US, the Artistos are a little pricey, so the Meeden is perfect. The brush I'm going to be using today, this is out of my brush set coming out in a few weeks, you guys. I can't wait. Is going to be, I'm going to be using this big old bad boy. This is the 16 round. I might also use my 8 round, which I created from, as you know, I love the Princeton long round. So I kind of created it from that. So those are the two brushes I'm probably going to be using today. And I've got my my water, one to rinse, one to wash, and my paper towel here. So I think we're set. Okay, what I'm going to do first is I kind of want to sketch out just a tiny bit where the placement of those flowers are going to be, just so I have a general idea. So I'm going to follow what I've got here. I don't know if it'll fit up above here, but I'm kind of using that for some reference. And I'm just going to kind of make them go different directions. So make that one going that way, this way, just to kind of give me a guide. There we go. And then of course I'll make my stem, my leaves coming out. These are the cutest little flowers, by the way. I love these. I had, they look very similar to the cone flowers, by the way, which I had in my garden as well, but apparently the squirrels liked them. So, okay, so I've got kind of this little umbrella I created, and that's what I'm going to use. You know, I think I'm going to change my mind. This brush is a little big for the Artisto pad, so I think I'm going to use my 8 round here. All right, what I'm going to do is just get my brush wet with clean water and just tap it off a little. Really, I'm going to just tap it off on the edge of my water, and going to go in here and just wet some petals. So I'm just going to do 2 at a time because I don't want it to dry before I get to it. So I've got my water down here. I've just wet these areas. Now I'm going to go into that pink, just because that's kind of my thing, my favorite color. That's out of the floral palette. I think they have a rose red, they have a peach light. So those are some of the pinks. And then I'm just using the side of my brush, holding my brush by the crimping, resting my hand on my paper here. And again, I'm going in with just a little bit of, so see that dried a little bit. That's why it's not spreading quite as much. Just damp and damp. So look how pretty. Now before those dry, I want to go in with just a tad of that yellow, which they call this permanent yellow. And I'm just going to mix out a tiny bit right in here. And touching in, because I love these two colors together. I think they are just gorgeous together, and they create this orange. Now, before that dries, I'm going to wet my brush and just kind of create that little cone shape in the middle there. Okay? Wash, rinse my brush. Tap, 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 tap it off, and I'm going to grab some of the green in my palette. They've got a lot of beautiful greens. I've got a mix here in my palette. It's kind of the eternal green, a little bit of hooker's green. I've mixed together, and then I'm just going to go in and draw some of these fun little stems. There you go. And before this dries, I'm going to go in and add a tiny bit of, let's see, I think this is the Cypress brown. You could also use the Van Dyke brown. And I'm just going to tap in here. Now, if you have too much water on your brush, this is going to go huge. So that's why I use a damp brush. Look how pretty that is. I always love the browns with my pinks. I'm just barely using a damp brush and just softening some of those edges. So I keep rinsing my brush, pat it off. And touching in. So look at that fun, soft effect we get. So rinse my brush, tap it off. Oh, now let's start another one. So laying down my water, I'll just do two at a time, or one at a time, because this one had kind of dried. We're going to let this dry, and then we'll come back to that. So I go in with that pink, load my brush, but not too much water. And I'm kind of using the side of my brush, if you notice here. Like that. There we go. Go ahead and go into the top here with some of that yellow. So I'm picking up more of that yellow I had in my palette. These colors are so beautiful together, aren't they? And then I'm going to go into the middle here and just color that in. And now I'll let that set, and let's go to our second or fourth flower. A little bit of dampness, no puddles. I'm just putting enough water there to be shiny and damp. And now go in with our pink, a little bit of the side of my brush. Aren't these fun? They're just so happy, aren't they? I love them. These are my favorite flowers. And if you've taken my watercolor beginners course, this is the flower that we do. It's a little bit different, but basically the same. Oops, there we go. Just touching the tips of those petals. got a little piece of hair there. There we go. I might even dab in a darker version of that pink right at the top. You can kind of play with that. And let's do our stems, just using the tip of my brush. So I'm holding my brush more upright so I can just engage the tip and very light pressure. There we go. So cute. Okay. Now, wash and rinse my brush. My brush is just barely damp. And I go in and just kind of soften all these edges because that's just kind of my look I like. So rinsing my brush, tap it off. That's just kind of my thing. I like the soft, blurry edges. And then I'll go into this center of the little cone there with that dark brown. Just tap in. There we go. Now we have one more over here. So I made this flower to kind of, this flower is coming out. These are all kind of turning, and I wanted to bring the viewer's eye back into the center. So I made this flower facing towards the center. So it kind of guides your eye back into the painting. Side of my brush. Look how easy this is. So fun. You could make a bunch of cards like this. Then just some of that yellow, because that is so yummy together with the pink. Rinse my brush a tiny bit, but still some of that yellow on. Just create that little button. And our stem. Making sure your stem, so I'm coming from here with my stem. Make sure it's pointing to the center of your flower, because sometimes I'll see the stem will be coming up and it'll be pointing this direction, and it just kind of looks wonky. Like even though this stem is over on the side, it's pointing back to the center of the flower. Okay, so I'm going to rinse my brush, wash, rinse, tap off a bit, and go in and just soften some of those edges like that. Okay. Now I think what I'll do is go in with some dark pink, because these are basically dry now for the most part. And I'm going to pick up about 80% pigment, 20% water of that pink. So a darker value. And then I'm going to go in and just create some little lines coming out. Just the lightest pressure with my brush. I mean, I'm skimming the top. Like that. Now this is just if you want some of that. So this was a little bit wet. That's why it went. It's pretty cool here. So if I had waited, that wouldn't spread out. But that's okay. Again, just the lightest pressure with that. Now these are probably wet, so I might have to wait with those. I will put some brown in here, and then we're going to go in with those leaves. Let's see, the brown. Oops, now that was a little too much water, but you know what? It's okay. So I love working in layers. So I've got some soft layers. I've got some mid layers. Now, once these dry, I will go in and I will create some darker layers. But let's play with our leaves for right now. I'm going to kind of mix the greens. And then here we go. Point, wiggle, 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 flattening out my brush. I'm just creating some fun leaves here. Might even add in some of that. They are calling it on here permanent green, but it's a very light green. There we go. So I'm just pushing and applying pressure to widen out my brush like that and make some fun wiggly leaves. Here we go. Like that. Maybe some lighter value ones. So I can rinse my brush, take some of the paint off, and put some in the background there. So there we go. Fairly easy to make these. Now let's go in. If this is dry, I could hit it with my little dryer, but I'm going to trust it's dry. And go in with my hookers and my olive green. I'm sorry, you know what? I think I'm going to use brown. And just do some little dots again, because this was quite watery. Just barely tap, tap, tap. Just the tip of my brush. Making sure this is dry first, but it just gives it that beautiful detail and that contrast of this soft, blurry look. And then we give it that pop, that bit of detail for our eye, because our eye a lot of times likes that detail. It kind of looks for that. I'm not going to do that one yet because it's still a little wet. So I might use some yellow as well. They call it in here, you could use either this Indian yellow or the permanent yellow is really pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. And I got about 80% pigment, 20% water on here. So I've got a darker value. And then just barely tap, tap, tap. Like, look how pretty. Oh my goodness, you guys. Such a simple little flower, but so pretty. These, I just love these flowers. I get so excited when they start coming out in the spring, and they're quite hardy. So some more here. We could even put in maybe some brown in there. Let's try that. So I'm actually going to use the, let's try the Sienna Deep in the Flora palette, which is actually quite light. It's almost, I'm not sure how to explain this color. It's almost mustardy. I might mix it with a tiny bit of the brown. I'm being careful not to put my hand in those leaves, and I'm just going to go in very intentionally and plant some of the little dots around. So I'm just using the tip of my brush, resting my hand and holding to the crimp here, close to the ferrule so I have some control, and tapping in. Look at that. It makes the viewer's eyes stop for a minute to notice these little tiny touches. And that's why I love putting them in there. You could even add, oh my gosh, isn't that gorgeous? What a difference. Yay. There we go. And then this one here, just tap, 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 tap. But look what a different, like your eye gets excited to see this. And this is just having fun. What I am hearing from so many of you is you can't believe how much better you do when you approach a painting just to have fun, and that your paintings are even better than when you're really trying and thinking about every brush stroke. I have had so many of you say, oh my gosh, I just went for it. I just had fun, like you said, Debbie, and you're noticing your artwork is so much freer and looser and comes out so much better because you haven't got all that tightness and restriction. So I'm picking up some more of that paint, and we're just going to go in and add in a few more of these lines. Not too many because I don't like a lot of detail, just very light. just enough to satisfy your eye. Because sometimes it can be too soft and then it becomes a little boring. So all of these darker touches can really create that interest, but we're working in layers here, which I love. I love. If you do anything, work in layers, because look at the difference it can make when you build and work with your values. So on here, I used those 3 values. I used the very dark value. Let me get a little bit more here. So there was my dark value. Then I used a medium value, maybe a little bit more in there, a little bit more. Now that might be too much, so let me pick, but practice this so you know what these values are. And then I had a very light value. So I incorporated all these values, and when you do that, if you notice looking at this dark value, which is 80% paint, 20% water, it pops out in front. The medium, 50-50, 50 pigment, 50 water, it's kind of like the mid-ground, and then you've got these beautiful light transparent colors that could be the background, or they just give that depth and interest of your painting. So make sure you do these little value swatches and then hold them up to your painting and say, do I have all 3 of those values in there? Yeah, I think I do. And you'll find it so interesting. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. I might do a tutorial kit with this one. They take me a little time. They're only $2.50 on Etsy. I hope they're helping you guys. You seem to be enjoying them. And what I might even do in here, because all of these leaves, as we just talked about, are all the same value, I might go in there and just create some darker leaves. Look at how that popped out. Isn't that fun? Like, so easy. You can do this. Point press, and look at that. I mean, just a huge difference, you guys. Point press. All of a sudden, it's so much more interesting. There you go. All right, I hope that was fun for you and you give this a try. As always, have fun, let go, let yourself, you know, enjoy this beautiful medium. And I love giving permission to my watercolors to really create on their own and do their own thing, what they're great at. And look at what it gifts me with. All right, everybody, happy painting. Don't forget to check out my new online course. It's beginners. Tons of small little short lessons, really doable, easy, fun, but you guys are sending me what you're creating as the final project, and I'm astounded you guys are doing so well. All right, happy painting, and thanks for being part of my little community here.